Dude.
Good evening, everybody. The Lowell City Council Environmental Subcommittee will hold a public hearing. Today's date is November 25th, 2025. Roll call, please, Mr. Clerk.
Council Belanger.
Here.
Council Robinson.
Here.
Council Yem.
Here.
3 present.
Thank you very much, and good evening again, everybody. So there's one item on the agenda tonight, discussion, integrated pest management, IPM requirements. Motion made by Councilor Robinson, forwarded to the Environmental Subcommittee. So what I think I'll do tonight, we have a member of the community that would like to present, who's been very active on this topic and help cities and towns implement IPMs into projects. So I think we'll open it up with a member of the public. Mr. Joyce, you wouldn't mind taking the podium here? We'll let you start off present. And if you could, name and address for the record, please, sir.
Sure. Hi, good evening. My name is Jim Joyce, 90 Mishawum Road, Woburn, Mass. I'm a commission member on the Woburn Conservation Commission, and I also am the founder and the president of a nonprofit that we have in Woburn, the Friends of Horn Pond. We're a 501c3 conservation-based group. On the topic of IPM, so I've been very active in promoting the application of IPM going back now a couple of years. We started actually on our own Conservation Commission with the IPM discussion, and it really surrounded the need to have a good solid understanding of what types of materials, products, whether they be rodenticides or pesticides, fungicides, fertilizers, for any of our projects. And so the need for that really got us to the point where we thought that IPM was a good way to go. We started to work with our applicants on different notices of intent, and even applicants that came in with RDAs, we started to talk with them about that as well. Conversations always came around to what type of rodent control are you going to be using on your project. And what we found was that applicants really didn't have any idea what they were going to use. They were going to hire a pest company. The pest company was going to do whatever they were going to do. But we wanted to make sure that we understood exactly what was being used in our projects. And so that's where it got into the discussion in our Conservation Commission, and now it's also gotten into discussions on our own city council level in different committee meetings and on different projects that are around the city as far as construction is concerned. And so in my proposal, so I have a small presentation. So we got the discussion into our meetings, and then I have a couple of examples, 3 examples of where we've implemented IPM in different resource areas in the Woburn area. One of them is at Horn Pond in a pump station where we're investing $22 million into a PFAS filtration system that will bring our water quality to the quality of the Quabbin Reservoir. Well, the construction company was going to do rodent mitigation and rodent control using anticoagulant rodenticides, second generation anticoagulants. We asked them if they would consider using something other than the anticoagulants. The reason being is that you're close to a water source, we have a runoff condition, we have stormwater conditions, and so they said, yes, we would consider that, and they went back to their pest company. Well, they did that, and they didn't use anticoagulants, they used snap traps and vitamin D3. And we put an order of conditions in that would allow for the implementation of IPM. We wanted to know what type of material was being used, what the application was, standard type of format. And then we wanted to make sure that we had line of sight to the different reports, monthly maintenance reports, and how effective the rodent control and rodent mitigation was. So that was one example. And we did that we've done that on a dozen or so different projects. We've done them on non-conservation projects as well. But it all came down to, I've got some language here that I'll just read the language. It's pretty straightforward. So here's the language that we have used in quite a bit of our orders of conditions for different projects. Prior to work, the applicant shall create an integrated pest management plan to be administered by a Massachusetts licensed pesticide applicator. The plan, IPM, shall include objectives, targeted species, action thresholds for all pests, product types, active ingredients, EPA registration numbers, rationale for use, method of applications for all herbicide, pesticide, and rodenticides. Anticoagulants, which include but not limited to brodifacoum, bromadiolone, difethalone, and difenacoum, shall only be used after all non-chemical and non-anticoagulant options have failed to meet IPM plan objectives. The applicant shall submit the IPM plan to the Commission for approval. No work shall occur on site until the Commission has reviewed the IPM plan at a public meeting and found it to be acceptable. That's a condition that we are using widely now on many different notices of intent projects that come before us. And we're using the same type of language on other orders of conditions, on other permits that aren't necessarily Conservation Commission related or resource area related. Now, in that summary that I provided to you, there's 7 different types of orders or conditions that you could draw from. We've used pretty much all of them. We also use them for invasive species as well, because it's not just a rodenticide issue that we're looking to go after. We want to make sure that we understand what's being used on different projects for different types of applications that have environmental impact, and that's what we're doing. Questions?
Okay, is that it, Mr. Joyce?
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. Very informative to the subcommittee. Thank you very much. And I'll open it up with Councilor Robinson.
Mr. Joyce, if you don't mind going back to the podium, I just have a quick question.
Yeah, I'd probably stay there a little bit.
Based on the projects that you cited, I have to say, I really like this language that you implemented. Thank you for sharing this with us. How many of the projects have you found, or what's the frequency of projects you find, need to revert to the non-anticoagulants as opposed to the anticoagulants?
So all the projects started with non-anticoagulant rodenticides, all the non-anticoagulants. So they were using when we first found is that applicants would just come in and say, yeah, we're going to do rodent control. Okay, we want to see what the plan is. And they'd come back and they'd show us, well, this is what our pest company is going to use. It's all anticoagulants. And we'd say to them, would you consider using a non-anticoagulant approach? And they'd say, well, what do you recommend? And I'd say, well, how about snap traps? Or let's say vitamin D3, chlorcalciferol, at the, as a last resort. It's non-anticoagulant. They'd go back to the pest company, and sure enough, they'd say, yeah, we'll implement that. So we haven't had one project or applicant that's come back and said, yeah, we're not going to do that. But we'd never tell them that you had to do this. We're not going to say, thou shalt use this, you can't use this, but we'd give them the option, and we'd make them a solid recommendation, and that way they can make the decision. And if we were persuasive enough and we had a good, compelling argument for why it's important that they not use anticoagulants, they would accept that, and they have in all cases. And I will go on to say that we've actually started using this now in different rodent mitigation measures for demolition projects that aren't even, they're not even projects that come before the Conservation Commission or before the City Council. They're just, we're going to demo a house, but we need to do rodent control as part of a building permit, and they're using this method, non-anticoagulants. They're actually using Banner Pest, which is the pest company that I think the city of Lowell is using.
Thank you very much for that. And so this is kind of something that's pivoted and merged into now the way permitting is being done in the community, whether it's, like as you mentioned, whether it's demolition, whether it's permitting for new construction, whether breaking ground for foundations. This is a ask that's implemented with all of that now?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
And what we're doing is we're actually working now to codify it so that we don't have to go back every time we want to, every time we want to go and do a project like this, we want to make sure that we have some good solid language that we can pull from and implement it right away. So it's part of the building permit process. It's part of the conservation process. We want to make sure that all of that is in place. All right. I will go on. One thing to say to it is that we do have a demolition project on an Eversource substation that's over in the south end of Woburn. And it's a building that's been in existence since 1914. It's been decommissioned for years. It had a PCB problem. It has an asbestos problem on site. They had to do rodent mitigation, and they went with a non-anticoagulant rodent mitigation. We just asked them if they would. They said, yeah, absolutely. And they put it in the plan, and it's all part of the notice of intent.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Robinson. Councilor Yum.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Joyce, for sharing your experience with us. We live in an urban environment, and rodent is one part of that. One part of the issues in urban environment. As you speak, I remember watching Ratatouille with my sons when they were younger. And I was saying to myself, I'm not an expert on this IPM, but I spoke to a friend who is very knowledgeable in the IPM. And as you said, the IPM stands for Integrated Pest Management Requirements. So, and then she gave me a whole rundown. She's more an expert, and she gave me all the rundown that it has 5 components, she told me. Component is the prevention, and then the monitoring, and the least toxic control method. And she also talked to me about coordinating and documentation. And the least part of that is, like you talked about, finding a way to be inhumane in try to control the rodent. And you talked about some non-toxic, some traps and things like that. And I think I understand that part. When I spoke with her, make me think for the city of Lowell. As a city, we manage a number of public buildings that the city owns and management. So she said the first thing, prevention, is you look at all the buildings that you have now, and you control that. You plug some of the holes, some of the cracks that the insects can penetrate into the building. That's one of the prevention that you start with it. And I said to myself, okay, who would be in the city of Lowell will be, so I was thinking maybe building manager of the city, things like that. So what you're talking about, what you're explaining to us and what you have been doing is more of the latter part of, preventing or trapping the rodent who are already infested in the building, as you mentioned, one building in Woburn building in 1914. But to me, it would be like she was explaining to me, prevention first, and then monitoring to see all the drop activities and everything. Then at the end, when you knock down the building, you would have less of an issue that you need to correct it. So that's what my understanding from what she's explained to me. And then the last thing I said to her, that is there a technology where you have this material using electronic to deter rodent? Because I purchased 5 solar deterrent of squirrel, and what it does, it absorbs the sunlight and it keeps buzzing it all the time, so annoying the rodent, annoying the squirrel from coming to my yard. And I said to myself, yeah, that sounds like something that the technology is we are at right now. We could use this kind of technology, solar system, that will deter by emitting a low frequency that would deter the mouse or the rodent from infesting in the building. Is that something that you also have experience and use in other projects, sir? Thank you.
So absolutely. I mean, the first thing, so with IPM, you hit it right on, you're spot on. I mean, the first thing to do is understand exactly what type of rodent level do you have? What type of a problem do you have? Is it do you have any problem at all? Do you have a nuisance problem? Is there some, acute problem? Is there an infestation? I mean, those have to be determined first. The second thing is, what type of, so in the building itself or whatever the project is, how are you going to prevent them from getting into that building? When you are going to construct that building in a way that makes it so that it's pest-proof, if you will. Go to a LEED 4 or a LEED 5 in your construction, and then put those prevention measures into place. One of the biggest ones that I tell folks, and I always go for myself, is the waste management part of it. It's one thing to say, I'm going to do IPM around this particular project. It's another thing to have the prevention in place, but it's another part of it to make sure that the waste is under control. So what type of waste management is in place for that particular project? Because if there isn't any, and you don't consider that, then if trash and garbage and all of that isn't taken care of, there isn't any type of rodent control that's going to go in that's going to take care of that rodent problem. You have to have the waste under control. As far as different technologies, so I've been using IQ sensor technology in bait stations, and I'm not an applicator, but I do have some prop bait stations with some IQ sensing technologies, some bait traps that have IQ sensing in them, and they actually monitor the type of activity that you have around a building or in a bait station, and it automatically, it's wireless, and it sends it, you set yourself up right on your mobile device, and you can go around a building and you can tell how much rodent activity you've had. So that's one thing that I've personally been using. Another thing that, it's interesting what you said about solar, because one of the techniques is using xenon light in nighttime applications around buildings, garages, and that xenon light, that pulsing xenon light, it drives the rodents out. So they don't want to come into that building. They want to stay out of there. So that's another technique that you can look at.
Thank you so much, sir. And that's the one that I'm more interested in, because we are more advanced now in this day and age. That technology would allow us to do a lot of preventive, including driven that rodent from the building. And that's what make it more humane and less work and less destruction to the building if we can get started,
That's right.
early on. So that's what my thing is, to find a way to be more proactive using technology to prevent this from rodent from a really infestation down the road later. So I think that's what I'm interested in, and I'm looking forward to hear what other products that you can share with us down the road later. Thank you, sir.
So we put together and we can get this to you too. We put together a group of us, so Joanne and Lee and Lowell Loves Wildlife and several other groups and myself and our group, we put together an IPM document that's all menu driven. It's pretty extensive, and it talks specifically about these different monitoring advanced technology applications that you can use. We can get that to you.
Appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Yem. Okay, before I go to inspectional services and city staff, any members of the public like to speak or chime in on this? Any members like to speak in the public? Okay, hearing none. I think I'll go, Matt, welcome, thanks for coming here tonight. So what do you make of all this, and how could this be implemented in city projects and the like? So I know it's a short presentation, but if you don't mind giving your take on this.
I'm going to take that for Matt, because I actually think that this would fall more under our building services folks rather than the health and sanitation. Matt, to the discussion that was just happening, which is that, you have to focus on prevention and being on top of these things in advance. Matt and his crew would come in if that didn't happen and things weren't sort of kept and maintained, and then we ended up with like health and sanitation issues. That's when Matt and his crew would come in. But to the discussion earlier, I think what we've been, and I appreciate folks bringing in examples of what other communities have done. I think what we've done here in Lowell is sort of ask people what their plan is. It's a part of the permitting process, but I would say that it was after this motion, actually, that was presented to us earlier in the year, where the building department sort of asked for proof of what their IPM plans were as a part of the permitting package and require that information to be submitted now. But it's still in the sort of discussion, and please have an IPM plan and submit that as part of the package. It's not like formalized in the permitting packet language in the documentation. So I think that, seeing examples from what other communities use tells me that I think that we could formalize the process a lot more than what we have here in the city right now. So I think that's something that development services can definitely do. It's something that we can integrate. We may just steal Woburn's language, for example, and have that sort of be actually like as a checkpoint on the actual permitting process, as opposed to just something that we're sort of asking people for informally. So that's one option. The other thing that I was thinking as he was discussing, that the Conservation Commission and their community thinks about this, right now, the way IPM or these questions come up, it's at the permitting stage. So after somebody has gotten their Concom approvals, after folks have gone in front of the Planning and Zoning Board, and I did confirm with the staff that it's not something that we ask people to submit as a part of those land use board requests. So that's another place where we could sort of integrate this into the conversation and think about it. As opposed to, at minimum, we could flag that it's an expectation that a full IPM package would be expected at the permitting stage when somebody comes in front of the land use boards, or it could be added as a part of the application process itself. So that's something that the city could consider. It's not something that we're doing right now, and something that we could add to the conversation, because it's just, we're not doing it right now.
No, I would agree, but it is somewhat in motion. Giovanni, thank you for the comments, and that's great to hear. And I would agree that this Woburn, I wouldn't know if to call it an ordinance, but it's a good blueprint. Language is a good blueprint to start with, right? So we could probably use that. Again, thank you for the comments. Councilor Robinson, you have a question?
Thank you. So, I mean, and a lot of this arose from two specific projects I know of, at least in my neighborhood. The major reconfiguration on the 110 area, where they may have disrupted nests or something, and I was getting a lot of complaints from neighbors in that immediate vicinity that were starting to see rodents when they had never. It wasn't a matter of waste being left around. The area was clean, but once that construction began, there was a surge of rodent spotting in that area, as well as up the street, the Apple Orchard project. That was just an overgrown field that sat vacant for a long time. And once construction began over there and they cleared all that overgrowth and all that, again, you dispersed kind of the rodent population that may have been living in that area. So I think it's vital that if we're going to have a conversation about implementation and looking how to implement this is done very early on in the process, and it also would apply to maybe approval not required situations if legally we're allowed to. So anytime ground is going to be broken on any project or any kind of demolition or any of that stuff, right out the gate, there's no shovel in the ground until this is in place. Because if not, I think we're chasing our tail with this. I think we're behind the 8 ball when the ground's already been cleared, it's already been dug up, and now they're going through the process, but it's too late because now you sent rodents scattered out into densely populated neighborhoods. And I'd also like to send kudos to Matt and his team. Again, as we talked about cleanliness, I know we have a really great team over there that ensures, and I mean, they're very proactive on all this stuff, and not just punitive, but they're very willing to help and advise and provide residents that information that's sometimes needed. I think maybe the pieces, I think it'd be very important to send over that list of possible options to that department in particular, so maybe they can go through it, and it just gives them more tools in the toolbox. So when a resident reaches out and says, hey, I'm noticing A, B, and C, well, Matt and his team will have that whole laundry list of potential applications, and it'd be up to that resident or homeowner or property owner to go out and hire the right people. But again, this information sharing is vital. And I do think the key to all this, to make it work, because it is a process, is implementation or a requirement along the process very early on, before anything happens. And I think that will really set the tone. And if it's something other communities, I mean, we saw Newton, Boston, Woburn, and I believe there's one more provided to us, Somerville. So I think it's starting to get the attention it needs. I think it's starting to be understood that it is best practice. And I think builders and developers are going to get used to and comfortable with these kind of requirements from community to community. They might be a little bit different community to community, but if we have a baseline standard for everybody, then they become familiar and say, okay, hopefully we get to the point where a developer's coming in and do a project and just submits it without even being asked as part of that initial package. So, but I really appreciate DPD and everybody that's willing to say, hey, I think we do have a path forward, and let's take a solid look at this. And again, I can't thank you enough for providing the many examples and information other communities are doing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Robinson. I think I'll go back to open up to the public again. Anybody else, or a few hands? Anybody else like to speak?
Thank you, Chairman Belanger. My name is Eric Gitcher. I live at 34 Livingston Ave. I'm here in no other capacity than a resident of the city. If we look back at the year 2000, they put mandatory IPM programs into schools, saying that you couldn't use certain toxins within school systems. Builders have had no problem with living up to those. If we can do it around our schools and we care about our children, why don't we care about them when they're at home? So that's the other piece. So when we look at what we need to do, and if this state does come out and ban rodenticides, we need to be ahead of the curve. And I think this is a good establishment to start. And I thank Jim for coming out today, but I think Lowell needs to step up and really send a message that we are here for the environment and we are here for the families in the community. And when you look at that IPM program that started in the year 2000 around our schools, you'll understand that it should have developed long before 25 years into our neighborhoods, because if we care about our kids when they're at school, why don't we care about them when they're at home? And I think that that's a driver to our community. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the board for listening to us. I think it's a great start. But I think we really need to set a solid ordinance in place that would support this, so that the state, who is following along right now, and hopefully they ban the rodenticides, and we also have a strong IPM program in place. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Gitchia. Great comments. Anybody else would like to speak in the public? No? Okay, hearing none. Subcommittee members have any more comments? Councilor Yam.
Thank you, and thank you to Mr. Gutierrez, and I agree with him, and I appreciate Ms. Byro's comment, and I like to make a motion to incorporate the IPM into any land use application that come before the city, because IPM, my understanding from talking to the expert, is that it focuses mostly on prevention and deterrence, or it's just the second part. So if we could do that, that would be awesome. That would be great. So my motion is to incorporate the IPM into the land use application. Okay.
Do I hear a second? Second by...
So, I just have one question to the maker of the motion. Do you think it'd be a better motion to have something drafted with DPD and input of the building department and then bring back for review? That way, because it's tough to say implement something that's non-existent at this point in time, but I think when DPD can work with the solicitor's office and the building department to come up with a draft that they see, and at what point of this process where they think would be ideal to come back for a review with the council, I think that might be a little bit more suitable.
If I could, if I may have the DPD directors, Giovanni, make comment, because your comment earlier, and I thought it's a really important part to get ahead of the issues by implementing the IPM. I thought the motion you put in motion by filing a motion, and then the law department, DPD, then come back with the motion response, and then from there we can then incorporate it into the city ordinance, things like that. That's my understanding. If you could just shed some light on it for us.
Sure.
please.
I think that DPD could take this motion and work with the law department to come up with something. I do want to just flag that I think that, well, not that I think, we know that there are projects that in fact are allowed to move forward by right. Projects that, aren't in a conservation commission zone, maybe, aren't asking for a variance, aren't seeking any relief in front of a land use board, that could theoretically go straight to a permit, and we would still want to capture those projects in this process. So I think that if we could take the motion and just work with the law department on projects that incorporate this into our land use and permitting, I guess, kind of capture both of them, then that would, I think, give us the flexibility to ensure that we're kind of covering all the bases, getting early in front of projects that are coming in front of the land use boards, and maybe incorporating that in the package itself. And then for those projects that don't have to go in front of the boards, there's still an expectation that they would need to sort of follow that. So if it's okay with members of the subcommittee, I think that I'd like to just make sure that the motion kind of references both of those things.
Yes, it encompasses more.
Right.
Ms. Rose, that's excellent. Excellent
Thank-
point.
Mr. Chair, thank you so much for the clarification, and I agree with that. Certain project may not be falling under, but as a property owner, it would be in my interest to implement the IPM, because if I don't do it now, IPM focus on prevention, it will cost me more down the road later. And then not just my property, but affected my neighbors' properties and the city as a whole. So if we all can do together, even though for applicants that coming in for the land use and permitting, they are exempt from it. But to me, it's to the best interest of them to implement the IPM, and then the city can provide it, even though they are exempt from implement the IPM. And that's just where I am coming from, to work together as a city to prevent this from down the road. So if I could refine the motion, right? The language would be to incorporate the IPM into the land use and permitting application where is applicable, right? Right. So, and that's my.
Okay.
Councilor Robinson, any comments?
Seconded by Councilor Robinson? Yep.
Second.
Roll call, please, Mr. Clerk.
Counselor Belanger.
Yes.
Counselor Robinson.
Yes.
Counselor Yem.
Yes.
3 yeas.
Thank you very much. But I just have a few questions and comments. Mr. Joyce, if you would mind taking the podium again, sir? We find your information very valuable tonight. Again, Mr. Joyce, thanks for coming in tonight. You're very experienced in this, spearheading this throughout the Commonwealth. And I think it's something that we need here in Lowell. As a former land use board for 10 years and a zoning board of appeals, it was always a huge focus to that any project throughout the city that we minimize the negative impacts on the abutters. And that's what IPMs do for sure. We do it for stormwater runoff, and we should be doing it for this, because in a dense city like Lowell, I think this is important and long overdue. In Woburn, so you're telling me in your earlier presentation, you had said to the subcommittee that, so you got a nearly 100% by developers, 100% compliance rate, even though it's not in the ordinance. It's more or less voluntary. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, that's a very good statistic that developers, and that's a decision we'll have to make here if we want this optional, if we want this, as part, in my opinion, it should be a cost of doing business. And that, whether you want to do it or not, it should get done, because you're not going to build rodents or insects to your abutters because you don't want to incur the cost. So in my opinion, it should be just the cost of doing business, sir. Now, what about the scope? Now, you had mentioned demolition, and that was a good word that I wanted to hear, because that seems to me more disruptive, if you will, where rodents and insects may scatter and find alternative hosts, if you will. So is that, you try and incorporate that in all demolition projects as well, Mr.
correct.
Joyce? Yeah.
And we did it using exactly the focus areas of IPM, but starting right at the beginning, and it's assessing what your current state of rodent activity actually is. And in that demolition, let's say you're going to take down a building, do you actually have any rodents at all in that building? It's going to drive you to what level of work do you have to do first before you start to mitigate those, put down rodent control. You're going to have to do that first. Now, I'll make it really simple. If you determine that, let's say you're going to put up a pool house, or you're going to take down a pool house and put up a new one, and you've got a landscaping that's going in, you're going to disrupt this area of land around a townhouse building or a condominium, whatever it is. If you assess what you have for rodents up front, and you know that you're going to disrupt that ground, and you look to see where your rodent burrows actually are, what's the source of the rodent activity, and then go in and target that. And not target it with a rodenticide, target it with, let's say you're going to use CO2, and you're going to put CO2 gas into those burrows. And that way, you humanely asphyxiate the rodents, but you never had to use a rodenticide to do it. It's far more effective because you're actually, number one, you found the source of the rodents, and number two, you targeted them and you went after and you remediated that problem. So that's the way I like to kind of talk about it in terms of the first steps. For any demolition, I would say, number one, look at what your rodent activity actually is. Then number two, find the source. And number three, use something other than a rodenticide, go in and target them and remediate the problem immediately. You don't have to put a rodenticide in with a bunch of rodent, tamper-resistant bait boxes, hoping that they're going to go into there. You actually went in and targeted them, and you got them.
Very good. Yeah. Yep. Great information. Joyce, so again, well, thank you. You provided the subcommittee and city staffers with valuable information and a valuable blueprint to go on.
Thank you.
To implement this in our city projects. I think, again, it's long overdue and something we heard from Councilor Robinson. He has experienced it in his district, and I'm sure it's more than that citywide. So it's about time we do something about it. We're builder-friendly here, and however, I don't want to see any negative impacts on the abutters at the same time with this issue. So, great initiative. Anybody else have any comments? Subcommittee members?
Motion to adjourn.
Councilor Robinson?
Just a brief question, or not even a question. I just hope maybe in the future, once we come back and get to the point where we have a draft before us, it'd be great if you'd be willing to come back just for a discussion over whatever that draft looks like.
Absolutely, I would.
Oh, greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you,
Not
Mr.
something that I
Joyce.
ever thought I was going to be talking about, but I'm more than willing to help anywhere I can. I started in my own city, but it's really branched out, and I would be more than happy to help you in any way I can.
You already
Thank
have.
you very much.
Well, we're going to need more, Mr. Joyce. Thank you again for coming down. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Joyce.